Welcome to the Outer Hebrides. This is the WINFL show. I'm your host, Ian McKinnon. I'm joined this week by Mr. Jake McGee. Hello, Jake.
Good evening again. It's been so long since we've spoken.
It has been a while. Hey, Mr. Patrick Jackson, how are you getting on? You're muted.
Smooth start. Yeah, I'm good. We've got one of the most dramatic conferences for the off-season to talk about, and an elite tier guest. You've wangled us as well.
Certainly do. Elite tier guest. It doesn't get much better than this. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the one and only Urinating Tree from YouTube to talk about the AFC North. Tree, how are you getting on? Thank you very much for joining us on our podcast.
Oh, guys, absolutely. Thank you guys for inviting me on. I'm doing all right. Just celebrated the 4th of July here in the States. Got to visit family, enjoy a few things, do some yard work. So enjoying life, watching baseball. The Pirates aren't doing too well, but I mean, that's just is what it is.
So are you Pittsburgh born and bred?
Yes, born and raised. So I've lived here my whole life. I mean, I've been to a bunch of different places, like in the States, but as I said, it's just the thing about Pittsburgh is it's the kind of place where a lot of people like prefer to stay, or if they leave, they want to come back. Like I've heard that a lot. It's like that kind of like that small town feel, but has enough size to be considered a city, but it's not overly intimidating, like a New York City or Chicago. Like I've been there, and it's like, whoa. You have an affinity for those mid-tier cities, like, you know, Columbus, Indianapolis, Milwaukee. Like, I can definitely relate to those cities. Those are beautiful cities if you've ever been. But Pittsburgh, it's one of those places where it's, if you go through Pittsburgh International Airport, go take the Parkway East, go through the Fort Pitt tunnels. The way the city just unfolds once you get through the tunnel, it's majestic. It's like the most underrated view in the city.
Until I go there, I will take your word for it. I've been to Chicago. It is a very large city, and I've been to NYC, and oh my word, that is it's an assault on the senses, isn't it?
Yeah, like I feel like I get a headache every time I'm there just because of the noise pollution and just like the smells. I mean, I wouldn't want to live there. It's just too much.
I can understand that. Well, like Jake and I live on a very tiny island off the west coast of Scotland. We're halfway across the Atlantic practically. And Patrick, he's down in England there, and it's a lot smaller generally than the cities. Even Pittsburgh could be a very large place from where we are. The only ones we have is the main cities: London, Glasgow, Birmingham, Manchester. But London's the outlier. Because most of the cities in America are a lot bigger than the cities we have here, and
we have a lot more sprawl. I feel like you're a lot more condensed.
Yes,
I know. Like with the States, it's just big tracts of sprawl, especially in the freeway. For example, like if I were to go from Pittsburgh to Columbus, which is a relatively small on the scale, that's 3 hours. Going to Indianapolis is 6 by car. But I mean, it's a different feel. So you have a lot more land to work with, but it's hard to fill. But like in terms of like England and Scotland, like you already have that sort of thing built up over centuries.
It's pretty old. That is very true. Pretty old. But you were talking about you had your 4th of July. Did you enjoy your celebrations?
Yes. Visited family, a few friends. My girlfriend, we went to her family's place. They made steaks. So it wasn't like the fireworks or the burgers, anything like that. But it was nice and relaxing. I mean, everyone just took a 3-day weekend.
Quite right. That's the best way to do it. Now, unfortunately, we do have to talk football. I say unfortunately.
Absolutely.
We love talking about it. It's the off season, which is the longest, 5 months ever. It is absolutely.
You're in those doldrums right now.
Oh, it's brutal. So what we're doing is we are doing our deep dives of every single division. Last week we did our AFC East. This week, of course, we're doing the AFC North with your Pittsburgh Steelers. But we are going to kick it off with the winners of the division last year, which was, of course, the Baltimore Ravens. Jake McGee, you have the handle on the Baltimore Ravens, and then we'll go around the room. So if you give us your main take, and then we'll put it around the room for the Baltimore Ravens. Take it away.
Okay, so some notes on the Ravens. They've got the 21st strength of schedule. Prep-wise, they're about 7th. So I've got them down calculated as about the 12th easiest schedule kind of overall. That is kickstarted by a really rough opening stretch. Before their Week 7 bye, they've got games at the Bills. They play the Lions, at the Chiefs. home to the Texans, and home versus the Rams. But after the bye, they get to play the Bears, who, the off-season champions are always the Bears, but whether they can do it on the field is another thing, at the Browns and the Jets. So it kind of balances out. Just want to see them get off to a good start if you're a Ravens fan. Defensive coordinator Zach Orr will hope to build on the defense that finished strong last year. Obviously, they've added in Malachi Starks, the questionable Mike Green, expected to contribute early and often. And then the addition of Jair Alexander makes the defensive back room look terrifying. If Jair and Marlon Humphreys can stay healthy, that would be the biggest question about those. Offense-wise, fairly unchanged. Some added depth, but they will kick the tires on DeAndre Hopkins, who joins a fairly underrated receiver room. For the Ravens, though, never won 3 consecutive road games, which I'm tipping them to do this year. Final 5 games are all outdoor and northern, so I would thoroughly expect Derrick Henry to play a huge role kind of late in the season if he can stay healthy going into the playoffs, because that's when they'll need him most. Like I say, other than that, they've not done a great deal. Cooper Rush kind of is an interesting backup quarterback for Lamar Jackson, because you often see you try and get very similar backup quarterbacks. I don't think you can find 2 maybe polarizing quarterbacks in Lamar Jackson and Cooper Rush. And they didn't lose a great deal. Obviously, we know about Justin Tucker. Less said about him, the better. DeAndre Hopkins replacing kind of Deontay Johnson, and Malachi Starks replacing Marcus Williams. So I don't expect a great deal of change for Ravens. I do expect them to kind of continue where they're at. The biggest question for them is, you get to the playoffs, congratulations. Can you actually beat the Bills or the Chiefs? Can you go that step further this year?
Yeah, and Tree, it is all about that. We've seen it. We spoke of the same thing, essentially, we said about the Bills last week, is that, yeah, you're great. You win all these games. You get to the playoffs. You come up against Kansas City and you lose. And it's almost the same thing with the Ravens. Yeah, you win loads of games, get into the postseason and you lose. Do you think that, because they haven't done much in this offseason, do you think that they've done anything that's going to essentially push them over the edge? Obviously, the addition of Starks in the draft is hopefully a big deal for them. What do you reckon?
I think the main thing with the Ravens is I've always felt like they've always found a way to beat themselves. I feel like they have the talent to make a Super Bowl, especially with Lamar Jackson at his peak. He hasn't been the greatest in the playoffs, but I feel like he really turned it around in that second half against Buffalo. I mean, I kind of figured Mark Andrews would have been a cut, but I feel like they're going to keep going with him. My real concern, more or less, is age in some aspects. How much does Derrick Henry have left in the tank? Does Jair Alexander, is he able to stay healthy? You have Marlon Humphrey, he's starting to get up there, late 20s, which is kind of rough for a corner. You also have questions at edge. Does Kyle Van Noy have another year left in the tank? You have Adofe Alway. Can he make that next step? Wide receiver, I mean, DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, he's not what he was, but can he still do a job? So that's my thing there. Like, I saw this firsthand because they would always find weird ways to lose to the Steelers, even though they were significantly better on paper. So they finally were able to get over that hump. They were finally able to beat them, to claim the division, and then just smack them around in the playoffs just by sheer force of will. And I mean, that's a different story entirely. But I think, like, the question is, if you have another playoff failure, because your season does not start until January. Everything's built up until then. You hope you stay healthy. Lamar doesn't suffer a major injury, which, knock on wood, but that's always inevitable. So my question is, if you have another failure, does John Harbaugh manage to survive another year, or is he told, get out? Because it's the point where you've had this window for a long time and it's been a lot of pain. You've had a lot of agonizing losses over the last decade or so, even years where you didn't make the playoffs. And my question is, how much patience do you have for that?
I mean, that's a very valid point. Patrick, the thing with the Ravens is that they do only appear to be just 1 or 2 injuries away from being essentially a mediocre team. If they lose Lamar, if they lose one of their defensive stalwarts, they lose Derrick Henry, and all of a sudden, we've seen it. We saw it last year with 49ers, a Super Bowl team, injuries, and all of a sudden, they get a top 10 pick in the draft. The Ravens do seem to be there. We know the talent's there. We know Lamar. He should have got MVP last year. He was absolutely sensational through the season. But they haven't been able to get it done. What do you think, Patrick, on the Ravens?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true of a lot of sides, and I think the Ravens drafted well to fill in what look like the weaker spots in their roster. And when you look at what's left, the cornerback room is the one with the biggest question mark around it, I think, because yes, they offloaded Brandon Stevens, who was a weak point last year, but they brought in Jair Alexander coming off an injury, Chidobe Awuzie. It's a room that looks thin behind Nate Wiggins and, as you say, Humphrey's already aging. And the other thing that stood out to me when I was looking through what was going on in their offseason is they turned down the fifth-year option on their centre, and behind him on the depth chart, is a seventh-round draft pick and an undrafted guy. So they'll be hoping to tidy that up and get that sorted out, but it's a thing that's underrated as a problem. And, you know, as a Jags fan, we've had a terrible time with centres in recent years. It really stymies your offense if you don't have that position solidified. So that's something they'll need to tidy up.
It is. And Jake, it's, you know, you spoke about the Ravens there. Where do you see them coming? What sort of record can you see the Ravens getting this time?
Well, they were 12-5 last year. Their over-under is 11.5. So, I think that's the highest over-under in the NFL. I don't think they've given anyone over 11.5. So, the odds makers don't really see much of a drop-off. But it's exactly what Tree said in terms of you can win 12 games, 13 games. We kind of expect that, but it doesn't mean anything if you lose in the wild card or the divisional or even the conference, because guess what? Only one person at the end of the year gets to hold the trophy, and it never is the Ravens anymore because, they get to the playoffs, but they don't get to the dance.
Okay, that's a very good point. Very good point indeed. But we're going to move on, and we will come to our next team in the division. And it was, of course, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Last year they had a 10-7 record. And we've got our guest. This is the reason we have our wonderful guest on here to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Tree, give us everything you've got. Last year, off-season, what you're expecting from them this year. Pittsburgh Steelers.
The question is, the Steelers are at a point where they're in sort of a crossroads here. The organization still believes they can go far in the playoffs, but unfortunately, over the last almost decade or so, you haven't won a playoff game in 7 years, since 2017. You've had a lot of heartbreak. You've had a lot of failures. You've had collapses. Especially last year, where you had the division in the palm of your hand. You had that big test against Philadelphia, Baltimore, Kansas City. They just fell apart. And it's what happened against Baltimore again. It's caused another bunch of changes. Russell Wilson, gone. Justin Fields, they wanted to bring him back, but they didn't want to pay more than the 1 full year guaranteed. He's gone. Najee Harris, gone. You have George Pickens. He was, head case, he's immense talent. He just kept fighting people. He's gone. You have Minkah Fitzpatrick, who was just traded. There were a lot of grumblings about him. He wasn't the same player. He's gone. There are questions about TJ Watt, especially with his holdout. I think with Myles Garrett getting $40 million a year, I think he's going to get over that just because of how much of a role he plays on this team. So now the Steelers, I feel like they're kind of in that Indianapolis Colts phase after Andrew Luck, where you try to bring in temporary stopgaps at quarterback and hope it can solve the tide. Last year you tried it with Russell Wilson, didn't work. Kenny Pickett never really developed. You have Mason Rudolph, you bring in 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, who's been a lightning rod, and you hope he says it's his last year, but the question is, how much does he have left? He doesn't have the mobility with the torn Achilles. Jaylen Warren, outstanding running back, but they drafted a third-round running back from Iowa. You hope he can fill the void of Najee Harris. You have a wide receiver, DK Metcalf, who very inconsistent, very talented, great home run threat, but he's kind of like a George Pickens. So now you have a question at wide receiver 2. You have a question at tackle, especially with Broderick Jones, who struggled immensely last year, got benched and then was forced back into the lineup after an injury to Troy Fautanu, who was our first-round pick this past year. You have, your interior offensive line's pretty solid. Zach Frazier looks really good. I think he can solidify your position for a decade if need be. You have Mason McCormick, who did a decent job filling in for James Daniels. Defensively, that's where they invest most of their money. Do have some questions there once again. TJ Watt. You have Cam Hayward. He's going to be 37. How much does he have left in the tank? Still really good, but you did draft Derek Carman for that reason, because once again, Cam Hayward, he's not going to last forever. Linebacker-wise, obviously, TJ Watt, God amongst himself. Alex Highsmith, interior linebacker. You're hoping Patrick Queen can have sort of like a resurgence year. He was just Cornerback, though, you did bring in some names. Darius Slay, he's going to be more like a rover, super utility guy, not a full-time starter. Jalen Ramsey, who was acquired for Minkah Fitzpatrick. I don't know how much he has left in the tank. He wasn't that good last year, but I think they're going to use him as more of like a cornerback 2 slot corner. It's not like a full-time number 1. That's Joey Porter Jr.'s role. But there are some concerns. Once again, who's starting at safety for Minkah Fitzpatrick? Is it going to be like a Darius Slay? Is it going to be Juan Thornhill, who they just signed? I mean, and you have wide receiver 2, tackle, Aaron Rodgers. So there's a lot of unrest in the fan base because it feels like we're just spinning the tires without really gaining traction. And I mean, 9-8 seems all right, but you're in that mediocre category. You just get, when you face like a team like a Kansas City or a Philadelphia or a Baltimore, they're just getting smacked. So that's where a lot of the frustration comes in. I'm guessing it's probably going to be another year like that. But worst case scenario, there is a lot of soap opera potential. And that's, I'd say, the real concern around here.
And Patrick, we spoke about very briefly when the trade happened with Ramsey and Minkah. It's one of those trades that I don't see it being beneficial to the Steelers. Yes, Ramsey's a good player, not the player he was. Fitzpatrick was one of the best in the league, possibly a year removed from that. And it just didn't seem right to me the way that sort of worked out. I know there was also talk with the tight ends and things moving around for Pittsburgh, but then, as was mentioned, 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers. It's just, it almost sounds like they're just trying to, what do they say in America? Put a Band-Aid on it? Is that what they say?
Yeah, just trying to put a Band-Aid on it or try to just slap, do the flex tape thing and just start leaking water, just slam it right there. Bam!
Bam!
That's what they're trying to do.
Absolutely, that is. It's like there's a huge leak and let's just smack some tape on it. That'll do.
Yep.
It might work. We could be sitting here in December going, check this out. Aaron Rodgers has been absolutely resurgent, and Jalen Ramsey looks like his former self, and it's all working. But it doesn't seem like it could be like that from where we're sitting just now. Patrick, what do you think of that?
Yeah, and it's not often you see a franchise change all 4 quarterbacks in a single off-season, and that's not normally a recipe for success going into the next season as well. And if there's any question marks around the Steelers, it's much more on offense than defense. The trade you mentioned, they're swapping an aging vet for an aging vet, and Ramsey has got the intelligence to be a great cornerback when he wants to be. Sometimes he doesn't want to be and he disappears, but you'd hope in a new place that he's just been traded to, he'd have a new lease of life and be really pushing to be at his top level. But you're right, I think him and Slay have both seen the best part of their career already, and we saw Slay pretty much surplus to requirements of the Eagles in favour of their younger recruits. And the other player in that trade, Jonnu Smith, feels like he's been brought in for...
It's Arthur Smith.
Yeah,
Arthur Smith
because that tight end room already full of really
Atlanta
strong
too.
pieces. Yeah.
The question is too with Jonnu Smith, you already have a full tight end room. Donald Parham was brought in, but he ruptured his Achilles, so he's out for the year. But you already have Pat Freiermuth. You extended him long term. He's more of like a hybrid tight end, but. Yeah. I mean, do you fill in a 2 tight end role now? Connor Hayward, his role's kind of dissipated because they're going to use Jonnu as a fullback, and Connor Hayward was more of our fullback. And not to mention, you do have Darnell Washington, who they use as more of a blocker. But once again, you have some questions that need to be answered there as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's a good tight end room. Overall, you look at that and say, that's some good tight ends.
It's an interesting tight end room.
It is.
The question is, are they going to overexpose Jonnu Smith because of that Arthur Smith connection? Yeah. That's the question. That's
very true. Jake, we'll get your thoughts on the Steelers here. We do look at this team as if they've got a lot of potential, but we just don't know exactly what's going to happen. And there has already been rumors about, is Mike Tomlin on the hot seat? We know what some of the fans think. But do you think that it is a legitimate shot that if it doesn't work out, that Tomlin could actually be looking for a new job next year?
I think when it comes to it, Mike Tomlin should leave on Mike Tomlin's kind of own way. He should, maybe he should have already done it. Maybe he'll do it this year. Maybe he'll do it in 5 years. But he should be the one to just say, "I'm walking away." I don't think, the Pittsburgh Steelers will necessarily fire him. They're a very good organization in terms of up top. So I do think if things go south, Mike Tomlin will come out and say, "Listen, it's not working. I'm going to step away," rather than game 6 being like the Steelers being like, "Oh, we need to panic and fire Mike Tomlin." I don't think that will happen.
The Steelers don't really fire coaches. It took them a long time to fire Matt Canada. So I think if Tomlin's going to go, it's going to be like when Tomlin's ready to go. RD2 is they're not into firing coaches. They're more into the continuity, the tradition. So, everyone says fire Tomlin. Oh, God, they're never firing Tomlin. No. He'll be the heat death of the earth. Tomlin will still be the head coach if he wants to be.
Well, and as Jake said, they are a well-run organization. The Steelers are essentially the envy of most of the league as far as the way they do things. And even if they did have a terrible season, they're not going to fire Tomlin in the middle of the season. They'd wait till the end of the year, do it properly.
They wouldn't do it in the middle of the year.
There's no way. No way they would ever do that. And you compare them to some of the other teams, the way they're run around the league, and you think, my goodness, I weep for the fans of some of these organizations, one of which we'll be covering very shortly, just a couple of teams' time. And in fact, with our next team, because we are going to move on to the Cincinnati Bengals. And Patrick Jackson, this was your team. Tell us, last year, Cincinnati. This year, Cincinnati. What do you got?
Yeah, so they finished 9-8 last year, and of all the teams in this division, they had the quietest free agency, I think, and a lot of those looked to me like slight downgrades. They let Jermaine Pratt go, brought in Oren Burks, who was a kind of fringe was a special teams guy and fringe linebacker in the 49ers, and then looks decent stepping in for injured players in the Eagles, but they're putting him in a frontline starting role, and whether he'll be able to step up and do that in a weaker defense than the 49ers and the Eagles certainly remains to be seen. They let Alex Kappa go, brought in Lucas Patrick from the Packers, and they weren't particularly fussed to see him leave, I don't think. So he's going to be slotting in there as a backup guard. Couple of established defensive linemen go, replaced by not really anything at all. Logan Woodside came in as QB3, which was pretty much unremarkable. They lost Trenton Irwin, who signed in Jacksonville, and he was a reasonable depth wide receiver, I thought, last season, stepping in when others got injured and picking up some really useful targets down the stretch. So not a lot going on in free agency. The biggest thing is something we talked about all offseason, is the Trey Hendrickson contract, and combined with the Sherman Stewart being unsigned as their first-round rookie, just real disruption in that pass rush room in a defense that really struggled last season and somehow doesn't look better this season. So it feels like they're not setting themselves up for success, and that's coming majoritatively from the GM room and the frugality within the organization, stopping them from really investing where they need to invest for the success in the future.
Yeah, and it's when I think of the Bengals, I look at them and I say, we're still waiting on see what's happening with Hendrickson. And everyone I've spoken to with the Bengals says this team can score on anyone, but will they be able to stop anyone? And if Hendrickson doesn't sign, the answer is going to be no. If they don't get that work there properly for him. So, Tree, what's your thoughts on Cincinnati?
The problem is, I don't know if Cincinnati has the money to sign Trey Hendrickson, because the main thing, they had a quiet free agency because they extended both T. Higgins and Jamar Chase long term. They both had the same agent, so they got kind of locked into it. And they're spending a significant amount on 3 players, which it's giving me those mid-2010 Saints vibes with Rob Ryan running their defense. Offense, dynamic. Can score at will, good running game. Some questions in the offensive line, but for the most part, it's the sheer talent will just power through them. And not just that, I would also, their defense, they gave up 500 yards to the Steelers last year. That's all that needs to be said. They hadn't scored that much in 5 years. And Trey Hendrickson was the only one really doing anything in that defense. And there seems to be a deep impasse there. They can't sign their first-round pick. Sam Hubbard, he wasn't the same, but he retired. They've lost more than a few pieces, although that could be addition by subtraction in some regard. So, I mean, I don't know what to think of Cincy. I mean, I really don't. They're Burrow's kind of reminding me of Dan Marino. Like, he makes a Super Bowl his first year and then just like he's kind of squandered, which is a shame because he's been outstanding.
Oh, yeah. I mean, every time anyone talks about the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, Burrow's there. Burrow's name is always there because we've seen what he can do as long as he's upright. The problem is he hasn't been upright very often. And Jake, we'll throw it over to you. This Cincinnati team, I mean, you mentioned it yourself, Jake, when they were dragging their heels over signing the wide receivers, getting the contracts worked out. And you've always been an advocate of get your players signed early to avoid these massive contracts. They didn't avoid it. They had to sign huge contracts. Maybe Tree's right. Maybe they don't have the money to sign Hendrickson. What do you make of the Bengals?
I mean, they just shoot themselves in the foot consistently, and I'm going to really pay a lot of attention to the Colts, because if Lou Anarumo at the Colts, runs out like a top 15, top 16 defense, you've got to be asking, who do you fire next? Because he was the scapegoat. They lost 4 games where they scored 33 points, which is damn near impressive. They started 1-4 last year, 1-3 the year before, 0-2 the year before that. Al Golden comes in. He's got a big job in his hand. I mean, weeks 1 and 2 at Browns, home to the Jags, followed by at Vikings, at Broncos, then Lions, then Packers. I mean, if they don't start 2-0, it could be another year where you're looking at the Bengals being like 1-6 and then being like, okay, they've got to win out again. And it seems to be the same story every year with the Bengals. And, you've invested so much into the offense that can you really blame the defensive coordinator when he's having to throw out like matchsticks, back there? I mean, like I say, if the Colts run out a great defense this year, it's going to be a real tough look for the Bengals.
It is because you're right. He essentially was the scapegoat, and we see this so many times. You're like, well, let's blame the defensive guy. What you're allowing 35 points a game, and that's a lot of points. But when you can't afford to sign any decent players because all of the money's in your quarterback and your 2 wide receivers, what are you supposed to do? If Hendrickson doesn't sign and the Bengals don't have him out there, this could be a disastrous year for this team. Tree, just to get us a final thought on Cincinnati there, because let's think about it. If he is there or if he isn't there, that has a world of difference for this pass rush in Cincinnati, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And not just him, Shamar Stewart as well, who you brought in. I'm looking at their depth chart right now. I mean, if it weren't for them, it's Joseph Osai and Miles Murphy. Maybe Cam Sample and Cedric Johnson. Like, most of those guys, they're not going to have the impact of a Trey Hendrickson. I mean, who's a real impact guy in this list? Like Logan Wilson, he can do a job, but I don't know if he's a game-changing impact. Yeah, Geno Stone, he was good a couple years ago. I don't know if he is now. As I said, it's slim pickings back there, and if they can't get it solved, I mean, you're going to have to score 45 points a game even to win some. It's going to be like 500 points for, 500 points against. It's just going to be shootouts nonstop.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely will be. And speaking of like 500 points against, we move on to our final team in the AFC North. It's the Cleveland Browns. Now, last year, the Browns had the worst scoring offense in the NFL. They scored 258, and they were ranked 27th in points allowed, 435 points allowed, giving them a negative 177 points differential for 2024. That was second worst in the entire NFL. Only Carolina had a worse points differential. They ended up with a 3-14 record, did the Browns. And a lot of, I don't want to say the blame, but a lot of the reasons for this obviously was to do with the quarterback situation. They had to get the quarterback situation sorted out because they had Joe Flacco. They made the playoffs. He goes. They try running it back with Deshaun and all these things that are going on with players, and it just absolutely didn't work. It was a complete disaster. So what did the Cleveland Browns do? Well, they made a complete disaster again. So we now have, you can correct me if I'm wrong in any of these. We've got Joe Flacco there. Mm-hmm. We've got, is Kenny Pickett there now?
Yes,
Kenny Pickett's there now.
Hey, they traded for him.
That's
the legend of Pitt.
They've got Shadur Sanders and the other boy, Gabriel Dillon. Is that correct?
Yep. Dylan Gabriel.
Dylan Gabriel, I beg your pardon. Dylan Gabriel. And you just look at this and think, what is going to happen? Now, the general consensus is Flacco is going to start the season. But we'll need to wait and see what happens through training camp, through the preseason, because there's a lot of talk coming out of Cleveland, and I have been trying to, it's difficult. I despise the Browns. You all know this. I hate the Browns. It's the worst franchise in the NFL as far as I'm concerned.
You'd fit in Pittsburgh well.
So going through Cleveland Browns, websites and forums and trying to see what the fans are saying, a lot of people are saying that Shadur Sanders looks incredible in training. He looks amazing. He's going to be the week 1 starter. I don't know if he will be, because you think that the cooler heads will prevail and Flacco will just start week 1, and if it doesn't work, you can bring in the rookie. What you don't want is to start the rookie and it doesn't work and you have to bring Joe Flacco in, because that is such a knock on the confidence of these young kids. It really, and they're kids. We forget how young these players are. Looking at the draft, they did get Mason Graham with a 5th overall pick, the big defensive tackle out of Michigan. They then went linebacker in the 2nd round with Carson Schweizinger before they took Quinshon Judkins, the running back, also in the 2nd round, and then bolstered the tight end room with Harold Fannin. Now, I actually saw a bit of Fannin as highlights, and I thought, this kid can actually play. I'd never heard of Bowling Green before, so I had no idea that was the name of a school, or a college, I should say.
Mac school.
And this guy can really play. They have got some good young players, Cleveland. But the issue, and we all know the issues that they're going to have, it's on the offense. These guys, they've got Myles Garrett. He is one of the best defensive players in the entire NFL. They've got good strength along the defense. It's just badly run. The offense could be an absolute shambles. They brought Jerry Jeudy in last year. He had the best year of his career. Nobody saw that coming. Absolutely no one saw that coming. But there you go. Just goes to show you, he just sucked in Denver. There's a shock. So what we're going to do is throw over the Cleveland Browns. Tree, I'll get your opinion first. This team is, and let's not kid ourselves on here, it's a disaster from top to bottom. But there is talent there. Do you think they can finally find a way to utilize that talent and not absolutely squander it like they've done with all the talent that they've had in the past? Cleveland Browns, what do you think?
I don't know if it's going to be this year. I think the problem is they put all their chips into Deshaun Watson. They were hoping that he'd be able to get them over the hump. The whole adult in the room. It never worked out like that. Deshaun was always rusty. Now it's not just the shoulder issues, like he couldn't throw last year. Now it's the Achilles. He's torn it twice. I don't think he ever plays again. So I think they're going to have to start all over at quarterback again. So Flacco is more of your placeholder. You hope like Gabriel or Shador becomes something. Kenny Pickett's another placeholder. Myles Garrett, the question is, you've thrown him over like $40 million a year, even though he requested a trade. I mean, you pretty much threw him money to keep him around, which makes sense. I mean, he is your defense, but he's nearing 30. So once again, it's a position where once you start that decline, it kind of accelerates pretty rapidly. The injuries either take you down or just the ability goes. I mean, there's that question there. You do have talent. Their offensive line still pretty good. Jerry Jeudy has been solid. David Njoku has immense talent. I mean, if he puts it together, like he had tremendous chemistry with Joe Flacco. So if he starts, I mean, I would consider Njoku probably would become one of the better tight ends in the NFL. But my thing there, the problem has always been up the top with Jimmy Haslam, and it's how is he going to meddle and mess things up? Because he was the one really pounding the table for Deshaun Watson, and that backfired horrifically. I mean, I don't think it has anything to do with Barry or Stefanski, but if you have another bad year, do you wipe it clean again? Do you try for a fresh start? Because, I mean, as I said, we've seen Cleveland have their peaks. I mean, especially 2020 when you won the playoff game, Baker Mayfield looked like the future, and then plays through a shoulder injury. They kind of throw him off to the wayside, and he's burned them in Tampa Bay now. He's become probably their franchise starter. Mm-hmm. But I mean, the thing there, they're going to be paying for Deshaun Watson for a bit. You can turn it around quickly. I just don't think it's going to be this year.
Jake, we mentioned Baker Mayfield there. I mean, that's a guy who was done wrong by the franchise. But it's not like he's the only one. They've had these players, and this has been going on for years, where you've got a player and you're like, this guy could be... No, I fancy this over here. I'll take that instead. The ridiculous contract for Deshaun Watson. Myles Garrett, as was mentioned on the Rich Eisen show, saying, it's not about the money for me. I want to play somewhere else with championships. Not about the money. What was that number you wrote down? Oh, yeah.
$40 million a year.
Yeah, absolutely. 40. Was that a 4? Yes. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, forget everything I just said a couple of weeks ago. It's all about the money for me. It's just... I've run out of... I can't even call it superlatives. What's the opposite of superlative for the Browns? I've run out of bad things to say about this franchise. They are a disaster. Stefanski should not be fired. He's the guy who essentially took this team from the absolute doldrums and made them a playoff team.
I agree.
And it's not his... I certainly don't think Stefanski had the last word in Deshaun Watson. Certainly don't think he had the last word in Baker Mayfield. It would be the upper echelon. So, Jake, your views on the Cleveland Browns. Sorry.
Well, you would really feel sorry for the Browns if it wasn't the Browns, because they had the second worst record. They would have picked number 2, and yet they've ended up with the second worst strength of schedule, bottom 5 for prep. On paper, I have them as having the toughest season imaginable. I mean, you open the season versus the Bengals, you then play the Ravens, and you play all 3 NFC North playoff teams back to back to back. I mean, it's just rough. You don't throw out a rookie there, no matter what. I don't care if Shedeur Sanders looks like God reincarnated, in preseason and training camp. You put Joe Flacco out there and protect those rookies, because that is not entering the NFL slate for any rookie. In terms of Andrew Berry, I mean, you can say the good news is that maybe there is light at the end of the tunnel, because they do have, they passed up on a generational talent like Travis Hunter, but they do now have another first-round pick next year. I thoroughly expect the Browns to be picking themselves right near the top, and they'll be keeping a close eye on the Jaguars and see how they do. They could end up with 2 very good draft picks, which can kind of help them immediately, fight back. But to me, they're just the most confusing franchise, because they trade for Kenny Pickett. You're like, well, this can't be the answer at quarterback. And then you pick up Joe Flacco. You're like, okay, I'm still not really seeing the vision. Then you draft Dylan Gabriel. You're like, okay, well, it makes sense now. You've got a veteran, you've got a maybe, and you've got a rookie. Oh, you're drafting Shedeur Sanders as well. It's just a clown show. I mean, they drafted 2 running backs as well. If they hit a position, they hit it multiple times. I think it's just the dartboard method. That one of these things has to stick.
Yeah, just keep throwing them, and surely one of them will end up good. Pat, give us your thoughts on the Cleveland Browns very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, we said it during the draft that it felt like at some point during the draft, the people doing the picks were chucked out of the room, and the GM the owner picked the last 2, repeating previous ones. And at some organisations, to say, okay, if they're taking best player available and getting value for those later picks, regardless of position that they can use down the line, but you don't have the faith in the way Cleveland build to give them that credit, I don't think. And they feel like the opposite way around to the Bengals, where the defense is a lot stronger and more reliable looking than the offense, but magnified worse by quite a large percentage, because you just look at that offense, and outside of the running back room looks okay, Judy's decent, and Njoku, we know, has got a reasonable ceiling. The rest of that wide receiver room looks pretty patchy.
Cedric Tillman's great.
Yeah, it's doing good wide receiver 6 in Dallas, stepping up to maybe wide receiver 2 there, and Deontay Johnson looks like he doesn't want to play football. And having seen some of the teams he's had to play, and I'm not really surprised by that, but it'd be a surprise if that was the resurgence that they needed.
I would be indeed. Right, gentlemen, that basically wraps up going through each of our teams individually. I think what we'd like to do is try and get some predictions for records for our AFC North. Jake McGee, would you like to give us a prediction for our records for the AFC? I keep saying NFC, I don't know why. The AFC North.
I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to look Tree in the eye whilst I do it, because
I'll look the other way.
I have the, no surprise here, Baltimore Ravens retaining the division 12-5. I then have the Cincinnati Bengals going 10-7. The Pittsburgh Steelers going 6-11.
Oh my word!
500.
That's painful.
I'm not saying I don't disagree with you. We kind of need a 6-11 year, but I mean, you know,
someone's going to be like
it'll be like 3 games where they just like randomly win by like the craziest stuff imaginable. It's like, what? We're 9-8. Okay.
Someone had to do it, and as I'm writing it down, I was looking at it like, you need to change some of these games because Tomlin's going to get 500, but I'll hang my hat on the 6-11, and then the Cleveland Browns, who go 0-6 in the division, somehow win 2 games, losing 15 others.
Oh, Patrick Jackson. Oh yeah, Patrick Jackson. What was your predictions be?
I have the Baltimore Ravens winning the division on 15-2. I have the Cincinnati Bengals somehow cobbling together a 10-7 season. The Browns and the Steelers both finishing 2-15.
But so you need to say that again. Did you say the Browns and the Steelers?
Now I will say I did the game-to-game predictions at the point when Mason Rudolph was the starting quarterback and they hadn't signed Aaron Rodgers yet. And then I thought, shall I change it because Aaron's in? No, he doesn't deserve that.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to really move the needle that much.
But you're right. We all know that Tomlin is somehow going to cobble together a 9-8 season because he's a magician.
I'd say TJ Watt and Boswell will do it. It's like, Boswell hits a 55 yards. Like 55 yards smash. It's like, yep, Boswell. Yep, this is going in. That's pretty much how it is.
My goodness. Right, I'll give you mine then. I've got the Baltimore Ravens taking the number 1 seed in the AFC with a 14-3 record. Mm-hmm. I have the Bengals in second place, and I'm giving them 10-7. And I've got the Steelers 9-8.
Of course.
I had to do it. I had to. It's Mike Tomlin. And I've got the Browns at 1-16 for the Cleveland Browns. I just think that it's all going to collapse. We've seen it in the past. I think it's going to happen again. I just see the Browns completely capitulating through this entire season. Tree, I don't suppose you've got any ideas of would you like to throw out a possible prediction for the AFC North for us?
I mean, first and fourth place are pretty set in stone. I say the Ravens take first place. Well, I'd say probably 12-5, 13-4. Mm-hmm. That would probably be the best way to really do it. They'll have like the 1 or 2 games that they inexplicably lose, and we'll be wondering, okay, what's going to happen here in the playoffs? And it's just, what? And then you hope they can rectify it. They'll go on this hot streak at the end of the year. I mean, the Browns, I would say probably 4-13. That would probably be my best remark there. They might steal a game, but otherwise, it's just they have too many questions on offense to really get the trust in them. I mean, unless Joe Flacco goes on another miracle run, which could happen.
It could happen, yeah.
Yeah, it mostly depends. In terms of Bengals or Steelers, though, I can't truly trust the Bengals just because of their defense. I think that's going to be the real concern. And I think they'll end up being 7-10 because they will go into shootouts. They'll win games like the high scoring, but they'll lose more games just because their offense just can't keep up. And I think if they can't get Hendrickson or Shamar Stewart's more of a wild card, but if you don't have that edge, you have nothing for that defense. It's going to be a mess. But for the Steelers, the question is, I mean, you kind of feel like you're moving deck chairs around. You hope you can do something there, but you're facing the NFC North. It's going to be a tough choice either way. And the AFC East, too. I mean, if you get the Dolphins when they're on a tear, you're playing the Jets week 1. I mean, I think you can take that one, but if Justin Fields magically goes off, gets revenge, I mean, I don't know what you can really say there. So, I mean, it's going to be probably Yeah, 8-1. I'll put it that way. Yeah, I don't know. Just tie somewhere.
I was just going to say, listen, you convinced me. I'm changing Pittsburgh to 7-10. I was like, you've convinced me. Nah, they're not as good as I thought they were. That's
yeah. I mean, I was debating 9-8. I'm not going to lie, but 8-1. That's a good way to do it.
8-1. Well, you heard it here first. Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin still doesn't get a losing record. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, gentlemen, that essentially wraps up our AFC North deep dive, but we do have time for one more segment, which is, of course, our random stats. Now, who would like... do you know what? Tree, you are our guest. Would you like to go first for a random stat, or would you like to take it at the end? See us out of the podcast?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll do it first, see.
There we go. Okay, so what is your random stat?
Ooh, random stat. I'm going in the baseball world that O'Neal Cruz of the Pittsburgh Pirates threw out a runner from the outfield to home plate at 105 miles per hour yesterday, which is lightning fast. I think it near ties the record for like the longest put out from the outfield.
105 miles an hour?
Yes. From the outfield.
Right. Sorry, Jake, what were you going to say?
Was he trying to kill the baseman?
And that's the problem with O'Neal Cruz. Like, the talent is immense. He's just very frustrating because the effort sometimes isn't there. So it's just one of those things. Like, I mean, he smacks home runs like over 100, 105, 110 miles per hour. He throws the baseball triple digits. It's just the problem of like getting that consistency down.
Wow. I'm not an expert in baseball, but I do know what 105 miles an hour looks like. That's terrifying. Because that is absolutely terrifying. That's wonderful.
And he threw out Julio Rodriguez, who's one of the faster guys in baseball. So I said this was yesterday, and I thought it was a cool stat to share.
Certainly is. Random stat. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Jake McGee, what is your random stat?
Okay, well, I was looking at people who also throw quite far. I was looking at the completions of 25 plus air yards last year. And I was very surprised at who was joint bottom, because it wouldn't be who you expect. I would say Green Bay led the way with 22 completions of 25 plus air yards. Pittsburgh with Russell Wilson.
The moon balls.
The moon balls. They had 20. They were tied with Minnesota. I won't go through everyone, but the Saints were at 11 with the Jags. The Rams for Dave had 8. Denver had 12. Now, the bottom teams, you won't be surprised Cleveland only had 7. You might be surprised that Kansas City only had 6, considering they've got, Xavier Worthy back there. But the bottom of the league of completion of 25 plus air yards, the Arizona Cardinals and the Miami Dolphins. So you think of the Miami Dolphins attack, you think of Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, all these people that can absolutely stretch the field. Well, they completed the least amount of 25 plus air yards last year. So
they usually do a lot of inside slants and let the receivers do the work.
Yeah, they're a screen pass merchant,
There you are. And of course, with Tua going down, we saw what happened when Tua wasn't playing.
The backups after that.
Hey, don't diss Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley.
We did that last week because I'd forgotten that he was a Pro Bowler. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Now, because we were talking about the AFC East last week, and we had spoken about Tua, and as I'm sure you've heard yourself, a lot of people saying, Tua can't throw. Tua's got a noodle arm. He can't throw.
He's got incredible accuracy.
And then he goes down, and that offense turned into the worst thing you've ever seen when Tua's not there. And you think, maybe Tua can play. Maybe he is a good quarterback. It was incredible, but I would never have had them dead last. Never in a million years. My goodness. Right, why don't I go next? And then Patrick, you can finish us off with the random stat, yeah?
Perfect.
Okay. My random stat concerns the AFC North, and given who our guest is, it concerns the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, everyone is well aware, because it gets spoken about a lot, that Mike Tomlin hasn't had a losing season as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. We know this. But it goes much further than that, because the last time the Pittsburgh Steelers won 5 or fewer games in an NFL season was 1988, which is by a country mile the longest stretch. They've had at least 6 wins, and they've only had 6 wins a couple of times. The rest have been above that since 1988. Everyone else has been just within the last few years. And it's absolutely insane, because you think of some of the franchises, you're like, oh, well, what about the Philadelphia Eagles? They've been great for years. No, they haven't. Just a couple of years ago, they were 4-13.
Yeah, dream team. They kind of fell apart.
Oh, completely. And you see that for a lot of these franchises. So, yeah, that is my random stat. The last time the Pittsburgh Steelers had 5 or less wins was 1988, by far and away the longest streak in the entire NFL. Patrick, what is your random stat?
Well, ours are very closely aligned, and mine comes from something that Jake put in the WhatsApp recently, which was teams' most recent 3-win or less season, of which the Ravens have had none, which means they have the best worst season in the entire NFL, going 4-12 in 1996 in their debut season. It was interesting going through all of the teams and looking up their worst season. So obviously we know the Browns went 0-16 back in 2017. The only other 0-16 season was the Lions back in 2008. And the Lions had the ignominy of being the only team to have 2 0-win seasons, going 0-11 back in 1942. My favourite 0-win season was the Cowboys' inaugural season, 0-11-1 back in 1960, which means they've been telling us it's their seasons for 65 years at this point.
Yeah.
There were 2 other 0-win seasons. The Buccaneers back in 76, which I think was their inaugural season as well.
That's the legendary year.
Absolutely. Tree's done a fantastic video, Hugh, called The House Reign of Error, which you can check out on that book season and the rest of that era. And the 1944 Card Pitt merger season, they went 0-10. And I have a hard time deciding where that should sit, because it feels harsh giving it to the Cardinals or the Steelers, since they were playing in Chicago at the time.
Yep.
So who knows where that goes, but that's the only other one that I could find in existence. And the other thing that stood out to me is that so far in the 17-game era, the worst season is 2-15 from the Panthers. We haven't had any 1-win or 0-win seasons in the 17-game schedule.
That might change this year with my Cleveland Browns prediction. Just saying. The Card Pit thing. What year was that again?
1944.
44.
Yeah, it was World War II. They've had a couple combined, like the Steagles.
The Steagles was the one. When was that? The Steagles.
I think 42, I believe.
Well, there you go. Hey, never let a world war get in the way of playing football.
Oh, no, of course not, dude. If we had a world war now, we'd still be playing football, both on your side of the pond and mine.
It's a great way to dodge a draft. You can play football through playing Spurs.
Oh, yeah. That's how they did it. Like, if you were really good at sports, you didn't have to go fight. You just pretty much played sports.
I mean, that's a great excuse. Unfortunately, I suck at sports. Also, I'm far too old to be getting drafted for anything. So that doesn't matter. That's all good.
Drafted to the Coast Guard.
Yes, indeed. So there we are. So, ladies and gentlemen, that essentially wraps up our podcast. Jake McGee, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure.
Patrick Jackson, thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure as always.
Huge thank you to Urinating Tree. Don't forget to check him out on YouTube. If you've not caught any of his videos, then you are the one missing out here, because they are hilarious. I absolutely. Do you still? I wasn't. Last year, I was trying to see. Were you still doing the Tank Bowl games?
Yes, I was. Not as often.
You weren't doing it as often. I thought I was maybe missing them. The Tank Bowl games were hilarious.
They weren't many this past year.
No.
Like, they didn't really combine.
Ah, well. But this year, though.
Yeah.
We'll get a few this year. It was absolutely wonderful.
We'll see.
So don't forget to check out Urinating Tree on YouTube. It's been wonderful. Thank you very much, Tree, for joining us on our podcast. We do appreciate it.
Oh, no.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Not at all. Hopefully, we'll be able to get you on again some point in the future. That would be wonderful.
Absolutely.
You take care of yourself. Thank you to everyone listening home. Don't forget, you can check us out on Instagram, X, and YouTube at the WINFL Show. And we will see you next time on the WINFL Show.